There's been quite a lot of conversation, most of it on social media, but there has been sort of more mainstream conversation as well about the appointment by Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen as his new chief of staff, somebody called Roman Cabanac. Not somebody I'd heard of until I read the first story about the appointment, but I've now had quite a lot. I've had quite a lot of exposure to what he has said historically, and I just want to start by making the point that the fact that somebody has what one might term conservative, or maybe even use another term, views, doesn't necessarily make him somebody who's not going to be good at the job. But he doesn't seem to have any specific history which situates him to do the job well, and his social media history is, to say the very least, controversial. The story we told about Sharpeville, that's wrong, no. So kind of the Bantu tribe to first build the pyramid, Stonehenge, the Colosseum in London before they built Africa. Bantu people, much like Arabs, are not democratic people, and on and on and on. And you kind of go, my instinctive feeling is, why did John Steenhuisen choose this person? Yes, he's got an LLB, and there's some suggestions that he has an LLB without having completed his articles, but he spent his time as a legal consultant in the issue of deceased estates. What's that got to do with agriculture? John Steenhuisen says there's no need for his experience to have anything to do with agriculture because his job doesn't have anything to do with agriculture. His job has to do with managing a complex organization. To which I reply, but how does advising people on deceased estates prepare you to run a large organization? Anyway, somebody who has also written about it, who has far more extensive knowledge of Roman Cabanac than I do, is the executive director of the Institute for Race Relations in South Africa, Gabriel Crouse. Gabriel, good afternoon.
Greetings. I should just say I'm the executive director of IRR Legal, which is the subdivision of the IRR, not the whole thing. Thank you.
Being a lawyer, you do need to get that on the table, don't you?
No, I'm just,
You're
anyway,
the executive director of IR Legal. There we go. Were you sort of taken aback? Because you write in your News 24 response to this that you had some exposure. You'd appeared on Cabanac's podcast and had taken issue on those podcast interviews with some of his views. So, I mean, given that history, that exposure, were you surprised when John Steenhuisen said, this is the man I've chosen? Because you also say you're a great admirer of John Steenhuisen.
I am that. I rate John Steenhuisen to be the greatest liberal leader in the Rainbow Republic. And I'm astonished that he made this decision. It just doesn't fit with anything that I have thought about Steenhuisen before. And I should say that I have appeared on Cabanac's podcasts. I have hung out with him socially and personally. I find him very easy to get along with. I think he's generally a nice guy, good family guy. And I should also say that, like, when it comes to treating how he interacts with people of different races, he's always struck me as someone who's like perfectly respectful and well-mannered. So the issue isn't at all with that aspect of him. The issue is with his political views and the fact that his job, the deceased estate story aside, his main job has been to be a public figure, to run a podcast, to go out and interview other people, including John Steenhuisen, and in that role as a public figure, he's made his political views very clear. And I have, you read some of those comments out. The one that I focused on in the News 24 piece was where he said, okay, I don't have the text exactly in front of me because it's on my phone. But
he essentially said blackness and liberalness are mutually exclusive.
Well, it's kind of worse than that. So what he said is that, to paraphrase, that black people can't be liberals and that if the DA wants to be a black party, it can't be led, if it wants to be a liberal party, it can't be led by a black person. And he said that in response to, you might think, well, maybe, I just want to say, sometimes you read a tweet and you're like, well, what's the context? Maybe if you really understood the context, like in the middle of a conversation, you scratch your head a little bit. Well, the context is Musi Maimane had an extract of his book published in the Sunday Times, and this is shortly before the elections, and, everyone's scrambling for votes, and Cabanac's contribution to that debate was to say, the DA constantly proves that black people cannot be liberal. And if you want a liberal party, it can't be led by a black person, something like that. And I think that that particular tweet, there's lots of objectionable things, but that particular tweet is important in the context of the actual leader of the DA having had this struggle in the party, this ongoing, long-standing difficult challenge that the DA has faced since Maimane was replaced by John Steenhuisen, of these two narratives. And the one says the DA is a non-racial party, and anyone can be in that party, and anyone can lead that party. And I've heard Steenhuisen say that, and I believe him when he says that. And that's part of the reason that I respect him as a leader. It's all about choosing the best for the job. And the polling commissioned by the Social Research Foundation, for example, shows most people in this country want that across all races. But then I hear this guy Cabanac say, no, if you want to be liberal, it's got to be led by a white party, it can't be led by a black person. And I think, politically, the message that's being sent is totally inimical to what the DA's basic principles are. And then furthermore, in terms of running an office, I hear what you said about, like, what does his experience bring to that? Also, like, what does his role as a public figure bring to that? There's many people who work in the Department of Agriculture, and, black, white, Indian colored, I think anyone could reasonably have issues with taking orders from a chief of staff whose public comments have crossed the line that Roman's has. And, I do want to just say that, like, controversial is one thing. Roman has controversial views, and I don't think that's the issue. And I'll just say, like, I've agreed with many of his controversial views. He thinks that, in effect, I'm sure many people disagree. He thinks that Jacob Zuma was a better president than Cyril Ramaphosa. And I'm inclined to agree. And most people don't think that, and many people think that's a ridiculous thing to say. You look at the numbers, whatever the argument is.
I think it's a ridiculous thing to say. But anyway, that's not, what you and I think is not pertinent.
And that's fine. Yeah. It's a controversial point, but that would not be a big issue. I don't think that would be a big issue to hire someone as your chief of staff who happens to think that Zuma was a better president than Ramaphosa. I think it's different if someone says the DA cannot be led by a black person. So it's not just that what he said is controversial. In my opinion, what he said is racist. It is racist to say that Bantus and Arabs are categorically not democratic people and have monarchy on their hearts, which is another thing that he posted. It's racist to say that a black person can't be liberal, or that a white person can't be liberal, or that a black person can't be socialist or fascist, or that a white person can't be socialist or fascist. All of those things, those attitudes that people take on, are orthogonal to race and kind of trying to squeeze everyone in a race group in that kind of way, and then trying to say who can and can't lead a party based on their race, clearly crosses a red line that puts the DA, the Agricultural Ministry, which, I really hope that it does good work, because there's a lot of good work to do there, and I think that, it just puts that all in jeopardy. And I cannot understand this decision. My assumption, as I wrote, is that I don't think Steenhuisen could have possibly known about all of these comments. But I'm not sure, but I'm saying that's my assumption.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll have to wait and see what happens now. For the moment, at least, John Steenhuisen is defending that appointment and finding nothing wrong with it. Gabriel, thanks for talking to us this afternoon. Gabriel Crouse, Executive Director of the Institute of Relations Legal Department.